I know that it's not normally a good thing to talk about these things because it's just going to keep spreading and eventually maybe it'll die down. But there has just been so much hate and anger towards the new 5-star Genshin character, Varesa, or Varesa, however you want to say her name. Now, before everybody goes crazy, I want to save my piece and at least just yap a little bit. The designs for Natlan have definitely been different than what we're used to, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with disliking the designs of any character if you're not a fan of. For me personally, I'm not a fan of Emily's design. The dress and even her own signature weapon is really pretty, but the hair just kind of kills it for me. But seeing the new characters being released, it just feels like everybody is up in arms and just does not like anything that Genshin is coming out with. Which on a normal just sunny day, that would be just fine, but people have a visceral reaction to seeing these designs. The big thing that people are complaining about when it comes to Varesa is the fan service. And I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, there isn't any fan service, because when it comes to Genshin, it is still a gacha game. There is going to be fan service. Fan service is always going to be something that exists. It just depends whether or not how the company decides to go about it. I'm also not defending Hoyoverse by any means necessary. I really hate that when it comes to anybody voicing their opinions about them liking a design, everybody just jumps to say oh, well, you're just defending your $1 million company. No, that's not what I'm doing. Me voicing my opinion does not equate it to me defending the actions of what a company does. I sometimes agree with people when it comes to Hoyoverse making decisions when it comes to character designs and representations. It just kind of feels like you can't voice your opinion or like something without being in the wrong. One group of people can essentially say they don't like this design because of XYZ. But if another group comes in and says, hey, I actually like this design, suddenly they're in the wrong. That their opinion is wrong. And it sucks because, I try to ignore it, I really do. But because I consume a lot of my media from TikTok, I do see when people post this stuff. I try to block it, but of course they tag Genshin in it and I see this content. It's just everywhere. And it gets tiring to a point because you want to enjoy this content. If you actually genuinely enjoy the game, it sucks just seeing just negativity after negativity after negativity. Which again, I want to reiterate, it's okay to not like something and to voice your opinion. But when it came to Natlan, it feels like there's just been nothing but negative things to say about it and no one enjoys it. Honestly, for me personally, I'm a big fan of Natlan. The story honestly was going into territories that we haven't normally gone with in the Genshin story. Or I should say we don't go into those topics as much. For me personally, I think there was probably 2 big factors that played into why Natlan is getting so much hate. It's I think more so 3 now that I look at it. I think the thing that kind of did play against Natlan was the character teasers and how there wasn't much dark skin representation. Unfortunately, Genshin is known for not having a whole lot of diversity when it comes to skin tones. People were already mad that since we already didn't have a whole lot of dark skin characters in Sumeru, unfortunately Natlan was faced with the same issue. And I think one of the big key factors was also that we were just done with Fontaine, which that in itself had a really great story. So the story in Natlan has to be just as good to meet with people's expectations because I'm pretty sure they were blown over the roof with Fontaine. And from what people are saying, Natlan did not meet those expectations. And the second thing that kind of hurt Natlan and is still kind of hurting Genshin as a whole is the VA strike. A lot of characters are still very much unvoiced, which unfortunately does kind of kill it when it comes to the story. It'll be a big action sequence, but then you'll just be met with silence. And by no means am I blaming the VAs for any of this. They have the right to protect not only their voice, but their image. But with all of these factors in play, it was already making people not like Natlan as a whole. And I do want to say it is a bandwagon of hate because eventually people will see her in game and actually change their opinion. And maybe some people won't change their opinion, which again, it's totally and completely fine. I just think that crying all over this fan service is a little bit silly when characters like Rosaria exist. Like, imagine if Rosaria was released in this day and age, people would be going nuts. And the thing is that, like, fan service has always existed. People are always talking about how Raiden is extremely sexualized for what she's wearing. Like, not to mention her ultimate as well is literally her pulling a sword out of her cleavage. I think that with all of the story and how, like, big Genshin has gotten, people kind of forget that this game is meant to make money. It is a gacha game. Am I saying that these companies don't have to put effort into their games? No, absolutely not. In my humble opinion, I do think that like Genshin or maybe some other games have kind of changed the game when it comes to gacha games. People want a story. Like if they're going to invest in a game and buy your product, they want a story. They want characters with backgrounds, which Genshin has done with a lot of their games. But of course, again, since they do fall into the gacha category, there is going to be that fan service. It just really depends on whether or not the fan service drowns out the character's personality. And in my opinion, I don't think the fan service, if like in my opinion doesn't really fall under it too much, it doesn't really affect Varesa that much. She has these animations, but she's apparently going to be a professional wrestler. But there are other moves and other aspects of her kit. It's not just her basic attack and like her apparent like intro animation. People focus on the fan service and that's all they can see, which honestly I think does a disservice to the character. And if this seriously does bother someone, then they can easily like drop the game, but they don't do that. Like if we're talking about fan service, for me personally, I dropped Zenless Zone Zero because of Bernice. Like, I saw Bernice's trailer and I felt, like, weirdly uncomfortable. Like, it was catchy, the music was good, but, like, all I could just see about her was, like, the jiggle physics. And I'm sure there's more to her character in the game, but honestly, I do think in that instance, the fan service overshadowed the character. So, I just dropped the game entirely. I was already just kind of burnt out from other gacha games altogether, so just being able to let Zenless go, it wasn't a big loss for me. And the one thing I did not do was go on either TikTok or Twitter or like any other social platform and just scream my head off that this game is awful and that no one should play it and that these characters are like have really awful designs. Because at the end of the day, this is the content that the company is creating, and some other people may like it. And it's what makes the company money. I just did what some people probably should do, and that is just step away from the game for a while. The negativity that I've seen has affected so many players to the point that some people don't even want to play anymore because they feel bad for playing it. And I think that's really wrong. We shouldn't let like this whole big mob hate mentality affect how we enjoy a game. Hoyoverse and Genshin and every other game has its issues, but we can still have fun and enjoy it. Focusing on all of the bad stuff is just going to make you frustrated and just not have fun with anything that comes out. I've seen literal like Twitter accounts dedicated to hating on Genshin on anything they do. And I know those accounts aren't going to last long because you can only hate on something so much until people just kind of like realize that just hating on something all the time isn't fun. But that's gonna be the end of my little like yap session here. Seeing everybody so upset over a character that I was like indifferent about, but now I kind of really like the design, it gets to be a little bit too much. My ending message is essentially enjoy the media that you consume while also not ignoring whatever problems it has. Genshin isn't the first and it will not be the last game when it comes to whatever issues that people come up with. Enjoy your games, your books, your movies, and just have a good time.